Welcome to our work session. Welcome to a conversation around what I'm going to call a vision for 2030. This is just for my purposes because being new here, I dove deeply into the long work that the school district has engaged in for close to 20 years about its attention to facilities and trying to meet the needs of kids. And I took a look at the very recent work that started in 2020 and the timeframes associated with it. And this was clearly a vision for the future. So right off the bat, I want to thank everybody who is involved in this, the countless number of people who are involved in different committees, the visits to different places. And again, just as someone who is new here as well, to kind of get a balcony perspective on the work and what was here and do it in a respectful manner of everyone at the table. We're talking about taxpayer money and our kids. And in that context, we want to give respect to all voices and to all thoughts in our planning of this. So I want to talk a little bit about how this school district engaged in facility master planning. Over the years, there has been a significant capital investments in the schools. And they occurred through community-approved bonds, budget items, and they were made regularly, and they did such wonderful things as basic systems upgrade, security upgrades. I had our assistant superintendent for business print me out a list of boiler upgrades, security upgrades, adding an additional classroom, fixing a track, doing asbestos abatement, taking a look at a roof, a generator, all these really necessary things. And I think all of us who are homeowners would do on a regular basis, right? You have a home, you're raising a family in that home or sharing it with your partner or maybe yourself, and you've taken a look at your kitchen and you replaced the appliances and you've maybe upgraded the ventilation system, you might have added on an additional room or et cetera. But again, at some point you sit back and say, is the house that we renovated with mindfulness and efficiency serving the purposes of my future and the future of my family? So that's the question at hand here. The solutions that have taken place have addressed basically end-of-life systems, enrollment increases, changes in program, energy efficiencies, security upgrades, and certain programmatic changes. And we recognize that the buildings themselves, we're sitting in one that was probably constructed, I don't know, like in the late 50s, right? They were constructed at a time when our students' population's needs and mandated instruction were simpler and very narrower. Very simple, very narrow. Today we recognize generally that our buildings no longer provide optimal teaching and learning environments, and I'm going to give you lots of specifics about that this evening. And over time, significant compromises are being made each and every day. It didn't take me long than 1 week to actually see in person what those compromises were, and I want to talk about them tonight in a respectful manner, right? It's our responsibility, at the end of the day, your administrative team, it's our responsibility to tell the Board of Education, the elected representatives of this community, what it is that we see as a concern, what a vision should be for the future, and take a look at the environment for all kids, and all means all, particularly, as you'll hear me repeat multiple times tonight, our students with disabilities, as we enter into the decade of the 2030s. Okay? This current work for this new facilities framework, and this facilities framework, some people call it a master plan, includes use of capital reserves and the possibility of going out for a bond referendum, of which this Board of Education hasn't officially voted on that at this point. Right? Here's my 3,000-foot view and the questions that were asked, and they're super important. What 21st century instructional needs are not being addressed sufficiently? This district won one of the most competitive grants in the state of New York to do school-to-career work, starting in the middle school. It's in the form of technology. If I go back probably 40 years ago, in a middle school like this, we would have seen a wood shop and a tech center and maybe a home ec kitchen. Today, the expectation is we have labs for 3D printers, that engineering and technology come front and center. And if you see the perspectives of that significant grant that this district won, it really is all about what are those science and technology skills needed, and starting in the middle school to go from school to career. The world is changing in terms of what post-high school looks like. Next one is what compromises have been made that no longer should be made. What compromises have been made what should no longer be made? And I will give you specifics about that this evening. Are the building limitations, the physical structure of which our life exists throughout the day, are they driving your instructional program, or are your student needs? Students that need 504, students that might need special sessions, students that might need an extra college course, this ability to expand to a grant. Is your building driving the program, or is this board, this community, and its students driving what's offered? What compromises have been made in programming, particularly at the secondary level, and are in danger of no longer working? And then last but not least, super important, what is the financial plan to leverage and maximize the significant New York State building aid and to use the capital reserves to minimize the local impact or cost of all of this to the taxpayers? I would be remiss if I did not give a huge shout out to Alida Zuber for her excellent work in this area. Okay. Deep conclusions for our discussion tonight. We have major instructional constraints in all buildings in this district. There is a key misalignment between needs and dedicated spaces. Instructional continuity, what we know about the true essence of a Princeton plan, is impacted by the current grade organization. You have significant shortage of support spaces. The world has changed since this building has occurred. Children with IEPs require related services, speech, OT, PT. They require one-to-one work with clinicians. This district has employed substance abuse counselors that don't have space to operate that, social workers that have to share with 3 or 4 different people. You have significant shortage of support spaces. At the last board meeting, we overheard about our culture of care and the need to have alternative spaces for kids, right? We have substandard common spaces. All of you that have kids in the school, you know exactly, or graduated from high school, you know exactly what I'm talking about. In short, the school facilities are misaligned for the current and, most importantly, future instructional needs of students and staff. For this conversation tonight, I'll talk about what's going on currently, and I'll get into granular details. A sound facilities framework, which has been created, recognizes and attempts to conceptualize the long-term solutions to the current reality. Anyone can punt, anyone can say, we're going to fix this right now, I'm going to make this tweak, I'm going to make this adjustment, but the people who put forth this plan in terms of facilities framework blueprint have long-term solutions for this school district. We all do know, first of all, the impacts of space challenges. According to the research at Harvard, the evidence is unambiguous. School facilities influence health, thinking, and performance. Noise, less personalized instruction, an increase in disciplinary problems, poor building and climate controls, and illness risk. Addressing the misalignment. All right, a great deal was learned from our work of 2020 until today. Our schools function with compromises, lots of them. Our mission, and so many of them that when I was meeting with the principals, I'd hear this, well, we're making it work. You're making it work. You got 3 OT, you got 3 speech pathologists working out of a room that was supposed to be a closet. That's making it work? That's not making it work. It's not making it work, right? School construction takes a long time. to research, analyze, develop, engage, and realize. It takes years, in fact, and this district has engaged in that really tough work. You have to execute a plan, a vision, that requires you to anticipate, all of us, in the need for change and the case for it. That's a very important part of our work tonight. And for some of you, this is iterative, and we've been there before, but it requires this balcony view. The longer we wait, the more things cost, and the longer we wait, the more kids miss out on the benefits of an improved instructional environment. So let's take a closer look at what are the important pieces of this district's facilities framework, right? You've got an elementary school section, which I will go into, middle, and then high school. And as you think about all of these, I want you to think about future-ready needs, okay? In the elementary school, classroom space is over 100% room utilization, and class size is at the higher levels. There is no more room for an additional section of a regular class. There is no more room in any of the buildings for an additional section of dual language. We have the demand and we have a waiting list. Music and performance groups do not have dedicated spaces. Often they're on the stage behind a curtain when in the cafeteria lunch is taking place and a teacher is trying to teach band, chorus, general music, or to run sectionals. Compromises use space, as just I mentioned, stages. Art is in a great deal of danger of becoming art in a cart, particularly at Claremont. They minimize the impact of a library in the elementary school because that space is now a compromised space for additional meetings, professional development, one-to-one tutoring, or all the different things that might be needed, right? I walked through Roosevelt and I saw through old wide hallways, people made closet space, which are basically offices for multiple social workers and speech folks, right? Multiple PE classes, sometimes up to 3, take place because of a lack of gym space. And then when you're trying to schedule, I used to do this a lot, particularly at the secondary level. When you've got your scheduling of gym being so tight and so restrictive, that then, if you think about an algorithm for scheduling, impacts how that principal can schedule everything else because that space will take priority over everything else. So you have an impact on program and when things should happen. Common spaces are overused, and due to limited cafeteria space, lunch periods start early and end late. So just an aside on that one, I'd like to read to you some of the conversations and data I received from, let's say, Claremont, right? Just to give you context for this conversation. They have 4 AIS teachers sharing one room, 4 ENL teachers sharing a room, social workers sharing a room, speech teacher sharing an office with 2 occupational therapists, 2 speech teachers sharing a room with a math AIS teacher. The AIS teacher meets in groups on the stage and does so during instrumental lessons, all right, academic intervention services taking place on a stage while music is taking place in the main area. We have compromised the library by cutting it in half to make a classroom and sharing it with STEAM. 40 children are meeting in a room to receive ENL services because we have no space. And on certain days when they're doing PE, when consultants come in, which is all part of the work that we need to do, art, music, and STEAM all go on a cart those days. That's just Claremont. That's what I mean when we talk about compromises being made in program. The need to break out another section of any grade, you will be giving up the art classroom at Claremont, and your class size is high, and there is a demand, right? That's just one of the things when we talk about here, right? Roosevelt, 1 grade school is inefficient, and it impacts instructional continuity. For all of you who know the research behind looping and combining different grades with others, When I was speaking with many of the staff at Roosevelt, they love the school, they love their kids, and feel that they just get to know them when they have to say goodbye to them and send them off to A&D. So again, in the true spirit of a Princeton plan, that's a concern. All spaces in that building are utilized, and despite creativity, compromises abound, and it is not ADA compliant. For general education and for students with services with disabilities and those with 504s. All classrooms do not meet the SED requirements for size. You have multiple lifts and elevator upgrades are needed. And your footprint in that building limits expansion. Some people will say, well, it was a district office. Let me give you an example of what that means when it's not ADA compliant. You can put an office for someone that might, or they could share an office space downstairs, but if you don't have access to a classroom and one of the students might have be on crutches or be in a wheelchair for a while or just can't have access, the entire class will have to move downstairs to another classroom, and that classroom will have to move upstairs to take that classroom over. That's what you do when you have a situation like that. All right? It's a significant and expansive challenge also if you choose to renovate that building while children are in school. I did a project like that. I renovated a gigantic high school while kids were in it. You have to have safety systems. You have to have backup systems. You have to have fire watch systems. You have to have construction people there. You have to, on a weekly basis, identify what work is taking place, and it will take you more time, and time escalates cost on this. It can be done, but a tremendous amount of careful planning around student needs. And we have, with many of our kids today, that's an older building. If you think about sensory integration issues, noise issues that go surround it, and the impact of that footprint, where do you do staging areas? Where do you put construction vehicles? Where do you do swing spaces? How do you create swing spaces in a building that has no space? There are significant challenges of upgrading this school to be ADA compliant. It can be done. It will cost a lot of money, and it will take a longer period of time. Continued use, by the way, of Roosevelt also necessitates the annual rental space of 400 Executive Boulevard for the district office, and for O Prime, and for many of the programs that we want, and people would prefer to have that right smack in the middle of town to be at the heart of this community. Okay, AMD. Room utilization during certain periods of the day is over 100%. Compromised spaces and very crowded hallways. Students feel the need to shove their way through. It creates overstimulation, anxiety, and tension. Common space utilization. Your cafeteria, gym, and library cannot meet the demands for spaces. There are compromises there. You have shared spaces for the neediest of children. Reading and speech are delivered in small shared spaces. Think about that. You're a speech teacher and you're trying to deliver services to someone else who's trying to teach an AIS math class in the same room. There are multiple setups for labs and music due to shared space. Think about music. Those of you who understand music, right? You come in, Christine, of course. You have sheet music, you have instruments, you have your piano, you have everything all set up. And if you have to take that down and set that up, you're either pulling custodial help to do it or other people, but you're involving people and it's taking away from instructional time, and it's not going to be the same for all kids. The experience for a child who happens to have their music class in a dedicated space is not going to be the same for another child who is in a compromised space. Your computer labs and tech spaces don't service the tech needs. You don't have room for 3D printers. You don't have room for those pre-engineering courses. You don't have room for the aspirational goals of that grant that the district wrote, which is School to Career. Right? And they also don't meet the tech needs because they have to use those rooms for general education classes. There isn't enough space to add electives or more pathway options for students here at AMD. Now, again, like we did at Claremont, I had, and I'll make sure the board all gets copies of this, I had them talk about what compromised space looked from a teacher perspective. And let me read you some of the comments on this. Right? Hallways are crowded. Stairwells are crowded. Students feel their need to push through them. If we increase the passage time from 3 to 4 minutes, we're taking away instructional time to do that. It is too tight during transitions. Classrooms are not vacant for prep time. There is no space to offer lunch help or to run clubs during lunch period. They cannot run small group instruction. We don't have enough classrooms for each teacher to teach without having to run from different rooms to do their jobs. I heard the phrase at OHS and at AMD, the backpack teachers. I was told, I asked for the data on that, you'll get it. I was told that the majority of teachers in both buildings are backpack teachers, which means they teach at least one, if not two periods out of their core room. What does that mean? Maybe some of you think that that should be okay, but I'm asking you to think about you're an English teacher and you're doing work and you're reading a joint novel and all your resources are in one room, but now you have to leave and teach another section in another classroom, so the district will have to purchase duplicate materials there, but just think about the teacher who's done planning and prep work and think about what we know about the optimal space of an instructional space and what kids do. I am a reading teacher. I move classes every single period of the day. Every single period into a different classroom. Another teacher, I don't have a space for my prep period. I have to do it in the car. Shared spaces for our neediest learners, speech and reading, share one space. It gets noisy. It's difficult for students to focus and it's not conducive to learning. Right? Teaching in less than ideal spaces, as the computer lab, doesn't work for all subjects. Right? Room availability. English teachers should be sharing with other English teachers because we have ARC materials there, but that often can't happen because we don't have the space. Classrooms are used every period, and teachers have fewer and fewer spaces to go to set up extra help or for children to find them for extra help. Right? Many teachers travel at least one period a day. There is no common space, flexible space. Shared classroom space with other teachers make it difficult to create your own culture in a classroom. Okay. Hopefully, executive functioning skills like the management of time and materials and changes in schedules, it would be a huge shift if we could have space to do that. Right. This is just a handful of the 8 pages of responses I received about that. OHS is a former high school teacher, a former high school, and again, I do have a background in computer science. I get scheduling algorithms. I used to do it and help people who have problems with scheduling. At times at the high school, you have 107% room utilization. I asked our experts who are here who build and develop high schools all over, help people in different states. And again, I was a scheduler. That's what I did. I used to consult about it too. I always felt that between 75 and 80%, so I'll be conservative, is optimal for schedule. You should not have 100% room utilization in a middle school or at a high school, right? You need to continue to provide maximizing career and college opportunities and pathways, but they're compromised when you have career and college and STEM and STEAM programs evolving. Hallways are dense. They have to have a 4-minute passing time. They create anxiety. Think about it as your first year at the high school and you're a freshman. You got to navigate from one end of the building to the other. That anxiety, they rush through it. They're worried about getting there on time. New York State, this is so important for everyone to understand, has increased the age of students with disabilities to the age of 22. Ossining High School does not have space for this additional year, does not have life skill classrooms for the required transitional elements from school to community. I was looking for all those spaces. There's no room for an alternative education. There's no room for an intermediate day treatment space for kids, not a space. The cafeteria, and Alita corrected me, I was wrong with 300, it's actually less than that. The limited flexible spaces, although if you think about a college campus, you can have a cafeteria, but you could have kiosks and common spaces and other serveries where kids can go and congregate and share and have food. But you don't have space for those either. Art and music classes are shared spaces, which leads to compromise in program. The 100%, 107% room utilization falls down to a few science classes where you have a SUNY class being taught in the same classroom as an AP class, and you have a number of art classes where you have multiple different sections of art being taught in the same classroom. That's how you get to 107%. Right? Related services, again, I need to go back to that. What are the requirements under the Individual with Disabilities Education Act? What are the requirements under a child's IEP? Related services are a key component to that. We also see more students with 504s. We see more students who require social and emotional counseling. This district has done an excellent job bringing in additional social workers, bringing in people and partnering and getting grants. We just don't have the space for all of them to occur. Today, now I just love this piece because I love talking to Jeremy about scheduling. The counseling center needs expansion for meetings, college visits, and to deliver options the students require. So let me give you a real example. It happened today at OHS. So you've got a room at the high school where they can go into to kind of like it's an open, flexible space. And let me get LaToya's notes here so I can be real specific about it. Okay. So you've got, the high school actually needed to hold a session for a college visit. Apparently, when NYU comes, and there are a couple of others, they get over 25 to 30 students to do that. They try to hold it in the Hall of Fame room, but they can't always be guaranteed that that's not being used for testing for a student that, a very special or important need. Or for example, if a teacher who's sharing a space wants to go to another space so they have an independent lesson. So they end up, this happens fairly regularly. I said, Jeremy, I want the list of it, where you get a college visit, they have to scour the building to see what room may be open if a teacher isn't using it or meeting with kids just to schedule a big space. Sometimes they have to move the college visits into an office that can only hold 8 people. You have an increasing number. I'd love to see more colleges come and visit here. You don't have the space to do that. And that's an example just of today, what it's like to live and to operationalize that statement. Your weight room downstairs is clearly not ADA compliant and does not serve as a fitness center. 15 years ago, we built a Fit for Life fitness center that addressed Title IX issues, that was equal to women's sports, men's sports, and incorporated a Fit for Life class that aligned with the new health curriculum as well. Your contours of your facilities framework, just based on that brief overview, involves 5 components to it that was part of the plan that was presented. To renovate the high school, to create a new grade 7 through 8 building at AMD campus, renovate AMD for grades 5 and 6, move the DO downtown in the center of the district to Roosevelt, and renovate elementary classrooms. What does that mean? Let's take a closer look at the high school. You're going to create more instructional spaces for academics, arts, and athletics. Remember what I said, if you got 107 room utilization for 2 periods a day, in order to have that work at 80%, you'd have to have pretty much a 27% drop in enrollment just to make that piece work according to the scheduling algorithms that are set up for success. When you have lower density in hallways and alleviate congestion, it improves student behaviors. So many of you as board members saw that. You asked that question last week. You need space for related services. You need space for speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, AIS services and classes. You need space for counseling, psychological and social workers, and for guidance and school counseling. You need space for special education, particularly for the life skills program required of students with disabilities 18 to now 22. It is a requirement under the law. If you don't do it, you will pay money to sending kids out of district with tuition for that. I'm a big believer, as you know, special education near and dear to my heart. The more we can educate our students in their own district, the better it is for families and for kids and for communities. Right? You have to address Title IX issues and support a Fit for Life center for PE and health. okay? Renovating the church building inclusive of important site improvements. You have STEAM, STEM, and dance theater additions and spaces. Your locker room, weight room renovations and additions, music improvements. You free up space for all those other things we mentioned as well. And then you create a 13,000 square foot student commons that mirrors a college gathering space that can have food kiosks for lunch and food services. You have a huge high school. It can only serve in the cafeteria at the most maybe 300 kids. You can't push out this way, you can't push out that way, and you can't push out that way, you can't go up. But you can do what colleges do, your kids are able for it. And then what it does, it opens up a conversation. Do you like open campus for everybody? Some of you might have different feelings about that right now, but you can't have the conversation because you don't have space for that to happen within the high school itself. Okay. Closer look, grades 5, 6, and 7, 8. If you make AMD a 5-6 building and build a new 7-8 school on the campus, you're going to provide a more developmentally appropriate setting for all 4 middle-level grades. You will maximize your air conditioning opportunities, and we see that coming here in New York State. Every inch of this project should do it, and you're going to upgrade infrastructure for AMD. If you add it, we have our financial experts here will go through the cost analysis of renovating Roosevelt versus building a new, and it's eye-opening for everybody, but everyone needs to hear that conversation, right? If you move the district offices back to Roosevelt, you don't have to pay that annual rent, and there's a big plus of having community school services, which will be greatly enhanced. We'd love to have Head Start here, right, Alita? And we'd love to have it in town and for kids in a space. This project also adds another 360 additional parking spaces, additional PE recess, and recreational and athletic outdoor spaces. Whether or not community groups want to use those spaces, that's always a board conversation, but these additional spaces are for your recess and for your physical education program. They all add a significant community value. Brookside. It's a 14,000 square foot addition to the gym and expanded cafeteria space because that space is hugely compromised. There was in the original, if you all remember, in the original plan document that was created in 2020, classroom additions for Brookside, but through the wise use of your capital reserve, this board and Alita, that work has taken place and it's being done through your capital reserve. And some of you might also remember that you'll see that for Park. We also pulled out of this project the additional classroom space for Park. They are happening. It's all part of your facilities blueprint, your framework. However, it's being handled in a different way. We've never lost sight of the need for additional space, but that goes to show you the iterative process and the attention to detail this work has been given. Right? Claremont will receive new additional with 6 classrooms and a flexible fitness and PE area which will be located below. Remember what I shared with you. You have at times 3 PE classes all at once in that one gym at Claremont. Remember that? And when I I read for you that data about how many people were sharing spaces. So you will get 6 new classrooms and additional space. And of course, while we're at it, always take a look at climate controls and infrastructure upgrades, right? Okay. If this is executed, it can cost up to $256 million. However, Ossining is incredibly unique in the state of New York. You have a sizable investment from New York State in the form of building aid, 69% of them. Now, building aid works a little differently in different areas, but generally that is the rule of thumb. That, along with your existing capital reserves, will result in a nominal tax levy increase for the community, okay? When you take a look at this section of this, and I'm going to hand this over to Alita when we get here because she is the true expert in all of this, okay? I want you to think about value in 2 ways. How are you achieving value financially? Are you maximizing and leveraging your New York State aid and services so that no levy increase will be after 2030? And what's the value instructionally? I would say priceless. priceless for the students that are here. Okay? In return, you're going to make a total investment of 2.78 increase in school taxes, but you get a significant, meaningful, and priceless return on your instructional program.